Welcome, sorcerers.
Eric's Kurosa recently released all the decks that competed in GenCon 2026, and I wanted to plug those decks into this deck networking tool to understand what the current field of play looks like. This tool is available for use at the website listed in the notes, so go over there and check it out. You can also check out the previous video that discusses in detail how the network is computed and what it represents, but basically every deck is a node represented by its avatar, and two decks have an edge connecting them if they are similar, more similar than this threshold in the corner. That is something that can be tunable. So basically, this allows the network to group decks that are similar together directly. So then you can visualize them and inspect them. And this allows you to concretely see similarities that would otherwise be just a hunch. And you can also see differences, non-connections that are made between decks that you might think are otherwise similar. So let's dive in. First, let's just look at all of the decks together in aggregate. So just aggregating all of the decks, we see that Necromancer was the single most popular avatar at 15%, which is maybe expected. And the second most is Sorcerer at 8%. But the other thing we see is a long tail of a lot of different avatars. So that's great to see that there's a lot of variety in the avatars people played. And we can see these distributions for each category of card as well. So for artifact, we see that Toolbox was the single most used artifact. In fact, it's the single most used card at 60, present in 76% of the decks, followed by Ring of Morrigan. So we won't go into all of those areas. You can check this tool out for yourself if you're curious. But let's just go and check out a couple of the top decks. So Eric's Kurosa ranked the top 12 decks from GenCon, and these are noted as the gold circles. And then any edge connecting from one of the top decks also has a gold edge. So then it's very easy to pick them out. So if we zoom in using the scroll wheel, we can see this first place avatar of air is connected only to one other avatar of air deck. So if we click the link, we can see the comparison. So the comparison shows the cards that are in common in the middle column and the cards that are specific to each deck on the left and right columns. So what we see here immediately is that there's a core set of shared cards that are maybe what you'd expect in an Avatar of Air deck. But then the cards that are specific to the first place are largely water. So that's also interesting that there was a water air perform so well. So I'm not going to dwell on any one deck too much. If you are interested in really understanding one specific deck or series of decks, then you can go and check out the tool directly. There's a link in the notes. So number 2 is also interesting, mainly because it's not connected to anything. So that is an interesting, unique deck there. And then if we go to 3, it's part 3 and is directly connected to 8 right here with a pretty strong connection. So the thickness of the line also means is correlated to how similar it is. But it's part of this, so it's a druid. There's a couple druids here, but it's part of this larger Necromancer water cluster, which is probably the most popular deck theme. And as we can see here, it's the most densely connected, well, aside from a Pathfinder one, group. So there's a lot of decks that are very similar to one another. But so let's just take a look at 3 and 8. 3 and 8 are quite similar. In fact, so it's not another druid and Mr. Druid. So these are both water air, but you can see sort of, the core set of the air water, which is very familiar to people now. But the differences in the minions that were sort of selected for it. So that's interesting. Pied Piper and Highland Princess versus, Ino and Self-Same being a couple. Oh, and Archangel. Yeah, so this is sort of interesting. You can check this out as well. Ooh, Dodgerel. Dodgerel versus Riptide. That's an interesting decision as well. Anyway, so these are quite end up being quite similar to one another, but are also quite similar to this water necromancer decks. So there's this sort of cluster where 3 and 8 are located, and there's also one that's at 10. So the necromancer water decks was a very densely clustered component, but so is this Pathfinder. So this is if we just look at one of them, Boring Red, Furious Pathfinder. So this is a mono red Pathfinder. Yeah, so that's sort of what this group is. Well, thank you for taking a look at these GenCon competitive decks with me. And if you're interested in this network visualization, go check it out at the link in the notes. And thanks for stopping by. Until next time.